Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with atbbq.com, and this is smoked chicken shepherd's pie. For me, shepherd's pie is peak peasant comfort food. You just throw whatever you've got in a pot, put mashed potatoes on top. What could go wrong? But traditionally, this is made with lamb or beef. And honestly, I just don't eat that much lamb or beef. I eat a lot more chicken than I do either one of those. So I figured, why don't we take essentially the chicken pot pie and mash it up with the shepherd's pie for this beautiful smoked chicken shepherd's pie. Now the first thing that we've got to do is break down our chicken and get it on the smoker. So we're going to take this 4.5 pound bird and break it down spatchcock style to smoke it on the smoker for the filling of this shepherd's pie. If you're really being lazy though, you could just, buy a rotisserie, but you want that smoke in there. So we'll cut along both sides of the backbone here. Remove that so we can flatten this thing out. Give this breastbone a little snip. There we go. And then I'm just going to clean this up a little bit to make it a little easier on us later on. Snip off that membrane. Get a little bit of backbone left over here. Just gonna slide the knife through there and remove that. I'm doing all this extra work just to make it easier later on. You could just skip all of this and pick the meat off the bones, but it'll make it a little bit easier to break it down if we get rid of any extra stuff that we don't need. So now what we've got, so we can pop these legs out. We've got all this meat exposed so we can get seasoning on there. And we can also pull this back to get access to that breast meat as well. And there you have your spatchcock bird. So we're simply going to get this seasoned up with a little bit of our trail dust all-purpose seasoning. And we want to get underneath the skin so we're actually seasoning the meat and not just seasoning the skin. The skin we're not going to need for the filling, but we are going to actually crisp it up for a crispy chicken skin topping on top of the shepherd's pie, just like a little bonus meat crouton. Anywhere I can see that exposed meat, I'm going to hit it with a little seasoning. And then we don't want to neglect the skin because, like I said, we are going to be using it later on in this recipe. Season up the surface as well. All right, let's get this over to the smoker. All right, so today we're cooking on the Yoder Smokers YS640s pellet grill. It's currently running at 300 degrees, so kind of the high end of the smoking spectrum, but that's because I want to get this done quickly, and I want to be able to put a little extra smoke on it by using a smoke tube. So the bird's actually going to go on top of the Yoder wood-fired oven today. You could do this without the wood-fired oven, but we're going to get the best crispy topping out of your shepherd's pie with this because it works as a broiler. So might as well just leave it in there. We can smoke the bird on top. And to add that little bit of extra smoke, I'm going to slide a smoke tube on the side. Now while the chicken's cooking, we're going to get started on cooking our mashed potato topping. And then we'll get into some knife work for the filling of our shepherd's pie. We've got 3 pounds here of russets. I'm just going to cut them into large chunks. And we'll boil them here in the induction. These can go into the water cold, and then we'll fire up the induction and get them cooking. So now on to the knife work. The first thing we're going to do is prepare a mirepoix. We're going to need a cup of yellow onion diced and a half cup each of celery and carrot. Next, we got a couple good-sized cloves of garlic. We're gonna mince those down. And then finally, we're gonna do a little fresh thyme on about 1 tablespoon. Just stripping those leaves off the stems, and that's it. And I almost forgot about the mushrooms. We're gonna do a cup of portobello today, but the great thing about this recipe is that you can pretty much use whatever's in the fridge. You got veggies that you wanna throw in there, throw them in there. And we'll just do a fairly small dice on these, just like we did on the mirepoix. Potatoes are fully cooked now, so we're gonna strain these off. Now to make the mashed potatoes, we're gonna pass these through a ricer that's on its finest setting so it breaks the potatoes all the way down. It's probably my favorite way to make mashed potatoes. Just love the texture that you get out of it. So now I want to add the items that I want to melt before we actually get the cold stuff in there. So I'm going to start with a couple tablespoons of butter. And then we've got 4 ounces of cheese. You can use any kind of soft, kind of melting cheese. This is a black truffle Romano. Give them a stir to make sure everything gets melted down. As you can see from the steam coming off this, it's pretty cold here in Kansas today, which is a good thing in a way because it's going to help cool this whole mixture down enough that when we add our egg yolk for a little extra shine and richness, we're not going to cook it. It's just going to mix right in. And remember, this is going to go on top of the filling and then into the wood-fired oven. So this is all going to heat back up while it's inside the oven. All right, not seeing any more chunks of butter. So we'll go ahead now and add 3/4 cup of half and half. And then once all of that is incorporated, we'll finish it off with our egg yolk, which is just about to freeze. Mix it until you see no streaks, and then just set this aside. You can store it at room temperature because we're going to need it pretty soon. You guys are going to let me not season this with salt, weren't you? Let's not forget to season this with salt. We're using the Jacobsen black garlic salt today, so you get a little bit of that sweet garlic flavor in there. All right, let's taste it. Ooh, that truffle is good, and that cheese, plenty salty. It's good to go. Well, the chicken has been about an hour. It's been on now, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And it's come up to 155 in the breast, which is our target temperature in the breast. So we're gonna take this off the grill, but before I do that, I wanna get the skin off here so we can crisp it up in a skillet down here in the wood-fired oven. Just pull all that right off the top. Just slid this skillet in so it's not super hot yet, but we're just gonna let that render down and crisp up, and we're gonna turn the temperature up to 450. I've got knit gloves underneath my nitriles, so we can go ahead and break this down while it's super hot and shred it up. Since we already did a lot of that prep work on the front end, it's a lot easier to take everything apart. All that's really left there is a little bit of that rib cage. Look how juicy that chicken is. Just shredding it into chunks, small enough that they'll break down a little bit as we make this sort of gravy-like filling. It's going to go under our mashed potatoes. So now with the bones discarded and everything shredded up, I want to make sure that we get all of that juice from the bottom of the pan. And all you got to do is just toss that shredded meat through the juice and it'll soak it right up. All right, so we've kind of crisped up this skin now. We're gonna take it out of here. We've also rendered out all of this fat that we can now cook our veggies in, which is awesome. I'm gonna guess that's probably close to 3 tablespoons, which is what we need. If you need more, you can supplement with butter. We're gonna add our mirepoix now, as well as our mushrooms. And we'll season that up with some trail dust, just like we did the chicken. Slide that right back in and let it cook down. So these veggies are getting softened up. Onions are getting translucent. At this point, we're gonna add a few more ingredients. We'll throw in our garlic and thyme. We're also going to add a little flavor enhancer here. We've got a couple tablespoons of white miso, which is going to bring like an extra little punch of umami to the filling flavor. Get that mixed in as well. And then once you got that broken up, I also want to add some flour now. So we're kind of building a roux on the go. Get a 1/4 cup of flour. So that's going to coat these veggies. And make sure we don't see any dry stuff in here. Let this cook. I'm just going to stir it for the next 30 seconds or so. In fact, let's slide this back in here just to make sure it's staying hot. All right, that's looking good. So at this point, ready to add in our chicken stock. I'm just gonna slowly start with this. Immediately starting to thicken up. Next, we're going to add just a little bit of our W Worcestershire sauce. 1.5 teaspoons or so. We're going to put that chicken in there that we shredded up. As well as 1 cup of frozen peas. Carefully going to stir this around, and we'll throw it back into the oven to make sure that it's properly thickened and the chicken's warming through. And then we're going to be ready. Hit it with a little bit of cream to finish and the mashed potatoes on top. Oh yeah, it's bubbling up now. So we're going to add in our little bit of half and half to cream up our chicken gravy. In fact, let's just go ahead and get this up top. And this is ready for the mashed potatoes. We're just going to scoop these right on top and we'll spread them out to cover. It doesn't have to be totally smooth either. We're actually going to create some little crags that can crisp up since we're using the wood-fired oven as a broiler. If you want, you can save back some of your cheese from your mashed potatoes and put them on top to melt. But instead today we're just going to brush the top with a little butter. I'm not saying I learned this from experience, but pro tip, put a sheet pan underneath your shepherd's pie if you want to keep your stone clean. Back in to brown the top. We're about 12 minutes in here. Look at that. That is looking beautiful. Nicely browned on top. You can see why the sheet pan's underneath it. The only thing we need now is to finish it off with that crunchy chicken skin. There you go, there's your meat crouton. All right, let's dig into this. Boy, that smells incredible. Those creamy veggies, chicken. A little more meat crouton. Let's dig in. Oh man. Creamy mashed potatoes. Creamy everything, except for that crunch on top. I love that little bit of like, that layer of crust that it puts on top of the potatoes. Great contrast to the creaminess of everything else. And then underneath, I mean, like I said before, you basically got pot pie filling, which is hearty comfort food. It just feels like the right thing to eat on a freezing cold day like this today. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out atbbq.com for all the products featured in today's video. If you enjoy the recipe, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to atbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.